some reason, I wasn't getting a lot of options to change my settings in Google Hangouts to a different mic. So can you hear me okay?
Oh, you're good, man. It's a lot like life, right?
That's right, man. Yeah.
Well, I was excited when I think it was your wife that reached out through the Tribe of Change and the red light therapy. Now it's funny. I know you guys work with Jeremy Stevens as well. I was living out in Arizona for a while, and anyway, I work with a fighter, if you will. We'll just say I work with him a little bit, Julian Williams. And so I'm sending him all your guys' stuff, right? I'm like, here, let's get on this, and I didn't realize. And then not too long after, your wife reaches out and I go, whoa, what the hell? And I'm like, this is perfect, man. It's just exactly something I want to get into because, I can skim the surface of it really, but when you start incorporating Dr. Jack Kruz's research along with what you all are doing, for me, it was like, yes, this is so it's new, right? But not new, but it's amazing, right? So if you will, man, just walk me through, I guess, how you guys came to be. Walk me through a brief, what made you unite and become the Transformer all together, right? And start doing this. Just walk me through that story, man.
Sure. Well, it's a great story. So, my wife, as you mentioned, reached out to you, and we're fans. We've heard, many of your podcasts. You mentioned Jack Kruz, and we've definitely enjoyed what you bring to the table. But as far as red light therapy, she came across it in a local tanning salon, actually, that had beds that were converted for that purpose, and she was intrigued and had read a little bit that. Had a wide-ranging health benefits, and at the time she was primarily looking for something that could basically kind of simulate sunlight. We live in Minneapolis, and we're entering the time of year where you don't get a whole lot of it. So that was one of the things that first drew her in. But as she tried it out and noticed many different skin benefits, she wanted to try to find something that we could use at home, and she was quite frustrated by what she found on the market. And really, the only options that she was able to find were small handheld items, devices that you could treat a small area of your face, but it would take a significant amount of time, to do anything other than your face. So I have a background in engineering, and she came to me and was like, "Hey, I want you to dig into this, figure out how this stuff works, and figure out how you can make one that we can use at home." And I was, as most of us are when we first hear the term red light therapy, it's like, that can't be real, right? But so I started to dig into it, and I was absolutely floored by the fact that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of published clinical studies on benefits from photobiomodulation or red light therapy. Also uses near infrared, from everything from what you'd expect. Most people will have some awareness maybe for skin health benefits, but it doesn't stop there. It goes much beyond that. Everything from muscle recovery, reduced joint pain, inflammation, and even all kinds of other health conditions. So I was like, wow, there's really something here. So what I started to find out was not only was the stuff real, but it had been around for quite some time. So low-level laser therapy, or LLT, has really been around for several decades, but it really hasn't hit mainstream, and it wasn't something that really gone beyond the practitioner market until relatively recently, with the discovery that LEDs could be just as effective and treat a much larger area of your body with at a lot more cost-effective price point. So basically dove into the science and was like, yeah, this is something we need to do. And Scott has spent his entire life in the medical device space and med tech industry, and he's also always loved marketing and the idea of growing his own company. So he was like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, I love how your wife said, okay, look, Mr. Engineer, figure something out, right? And I hate to just say it's the personality of the engineer, but it is, to where it goes, give me something I can solve. I had a ex-rocket scientist and chemical engineer, Christian, on. Same aspect, right? They look at life that way. They take a problem and go, okay, just do this and fix it. And I love how that came to be. And a lot of ideas start that way. It's like, hey, find a solution, and then it starts to spread that way. But then it looks like you reached out and said, hey, Scott, I know you can do this part. And like your wife told you, like, look, do this part. All right. Cause I'm going to build this stuff, but I need you, Scott. Is that kind of how you came in to the company or idea?
Yeah. Just like Justin had mentioned, I was pretty skeptical myself, and my wife also had been experimenting with red light therapy at the same local salon here in Minneapolis. And so just like Justin, my background's I spent my entire career in the medical device space with companies like Medtronic and Boston Scientific, et cetera. And I have a biology background, so I'm a little bit more, I'd like to think I'm somewhat technical. And so I just like Justin, I was a little bit skeptical, thinking red light therapy, just like probably most of your people that are listening to the Cognitive Rampage right now. They're like, what's going on with this stuff? But
skeptical is understatement, man. I mean, if you watched any late night infomercial, you saw, just put this over your skin, it'd be white lights and then all other kinds of lights, man. It was, of course, right. It's too easy, right? Especially people that experience some of the things this is good for, especially things like fibromyalgia and pain. For me, it's a huge interest on the mental health aspect because so much of that links to the opiate addiction. It leads to taking pills, etc. And people experience that. So even if it brings down, the redlining just below it, you can really prevent addiction. For me, it's another route of going, preventing pain and serious issues that way. So, but those skeptics for sure, because they hold on to, you don't know how bad it does hurt, right? Or what this really is about. Something that simple can't solve my problem.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a common question that we get, how can this be effective for so many different health benefits? I mean, it sounds way too good to be true, but
marijuana gets the same rap, right?
It's true.
How does it? No, it can't be that good for that many. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the main reason why it's so effective is because what it does at a biological level, and it's giving energy directly to our cells in a way that our bodies are designed to be able to absorb and harness and really turn into cellular energy. So by helping your body at the cellular level, you can really affect a change with a lot of different health ramifications.
Yeah, what was some of the first ones? Because I know, like, I actually know a few people in the marijuana business that are so dedicated for the medical reasons right behind it. They have like one or two that really have affected their lives, right? Things they've seen. There's people like that. People tend to forget that. They mix the two up. And there's scientists. There's, believers in the medicine side, which I am too. They have that focus. For you, was there anything in any of your lives to where it affected you directly, where you saw a major change by implementing red light therapy?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that we've seen personally, my wife, when she was first training in the salon, it basically totally cured her of some issues that she'd had with eczema for quite some time. Quite, debilitating, uncomfortable is the understatement. But also she was interested in it for how it can help with gut health. We've had some other things on our own family members that have had issues with, they've noticed improvements in their eyes, for example, eyesight, some different eye conditions. So it's amazing when you start to look at it, and that's honestly my favorite thing about what we do is getting the reviews from our customers and hearing them say, hey, it helped the other one we got this week from it. She bought a light for her 82-year-old mother, and her mom just loves it. She, has increased energy, and it's like she won't miss a day now.
What about you, Scott? Something more personal on the edge with this?
Yeah, no, I primarily, Adam, use it prophylactically, just because I fundamentally believe in the science, and that I'm helping to enhance normal cellular function. So that's primarily how I use it on a daily basis. But my wife, anecdotally, she's had glasses since she was a child, and so with every annual checkup over the past 3 years, since we've been building these light therapy devices, her vision has actually incrementally improved year over year. So that, in conjunction with some other benefits, skin related to skin health, and also at a deeper level, with specific to some hip pain that she had been experiencing, are probably some of the more profound changes. But it's just like we encourage all of our customers too. Yes, light therapy is clinically documented to enhance a lot of different things with respect to health. but there's also other aspects too, right? That I think everyone should be incorporating, right? Like my wife, for example, I know you've had Nadi on your show quite a bit, Nadi Aguilar with Functional Patterns. That's another great program that she's had a lot of success with as well. So light therapy is just one of many, aspects in terms of, a fully, a well-rounded sort of like, treatment algorithm for just proactive health.
Yeah, something to add. Was some of that outcome with your wife or even yourself, was that part of getting over that skepticism real quick as you entered into doing the company here with Justin and his wife and everyone else?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a, like myself, I'm a little bit more of a science nerd. So I want to, and some of that's because of my background in the med tech space. I mean, the first thing that I've always sort of was trained to sort of look at first is the clinical data, like what published literature is there that supports this type of science. And that there's a ton of, I mean, it's overwhelming the amount of clinical literature, that's
one. What's something that stuck out to you, if you remember, like in the research that kind of was, okay, I'm listening here. Okay, I'm on board.
Yeah. So I think, and Justin kind of mentioned this earlier. If people are familiar with light therapy, most are familiar with it in the context of a medical spa. So for like skin conditions, right? Like, helping with tone and texture, reducing wrinkles, et cetera. There's plenty of evidence to support that, but also specific to what I was most intrigued about is, those studies specific to muscle recovery and athletic performance. One in particular, participants used light therapy both before and after training. But especially before training, they showed a 50% increase in the amount of muscle thickness when using light therapy. And it was like bicep extension exercises is kind of the exercise they were doing and what the muscle group that they measured. But 50% increase just by using light therapy alone is pretty profound. And so that's just one of like a multitude of clinical studies. So it's that, and then in conjunction with like, seeing the benefits firsthand, from the people that we know, kind of in our close family, and then also just the sheer number of customers that are using this device now and have reported back really positive benefits. It's just hard to ignore.
And I like it from the aspect that you're not stating this is the end all to be all, right? That's when we all get skeptical when someone says that. But incorporating small moments of time, just in your routine to find to do something like that. It's also not like going to get a treatment, right? Where you go pay this huge amount of money, maybe something medical procedure, something like that, right? It's something you can incorporate. You don't have to spend so much money on some $3,000 treadmill, right? You're going to walk on twice. It's something you can actually work into your life that's affordable too. That's the other view that I like and the approach that you all have taken.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was most floored in looking at the research and and following guys like Dr. Jack Kruse is just the incredible role that light plays in our overall health. I know it's something that I personally totally underestimated. I think we get so focused in on food and other aspects of health, and we totally miss the fact that we were for thousands or however, depending on your beliefs, however long we've been on this planet, we've been exposed to natural sunlight, almost all the time. And that's obviously totally changed here in the past, 100 years or so. And so I think some of us are really missing out on getting the light that our bodies need. And so this is a great way that we can really give our bodies the specific wavelengths and intensity of light that our cells are able to harness and help kind of supplement what we get from a natural light standpoint.
If you would walk through whoever jumps on the science part of it, it'll probably be both of you from the sounds of it, but walk through, if you will, those that may be new to it or don't understand it, not even as far as even heard of Jack Kruse, right? But I understand the light penetration depths vary between colors, etc. But walk somebody in that's basically not even understanding the idea of the mitochondria, our circadian rhythms, how that's affected by what we're missing.
Yeah, exactly. So sunlight is a wide range of wavelengths. So you have everything from in the UV spectrum from 0 to 400 nanometers. You have visible light from 400 to 700 nanometers, the colors of the rainbow essentially. And then you have the infrared spectrum that goes from the 700 nanometers on up well in excess of 3,000 nanometers. And I think most of us, when we hear the term infrared, we think of that's a type of wavelength. But the reality is it's this huge band. And so there's all different types of benefits from those wavelengths. A lot of us are familiar with infrared saunas, for example. Those typically use wavelengths longer than 3,000 nanometers for the purpose of heating our tissue and the resulting cardiovascular benefits that can be gained from those longer wavelengths. What photobiomodulation does is it uses specific wavelengths that are intended to feed the mitochondrial activity, and there's two ranges that have been proven to be the most effective. The first of which is between about 630 to 670 nanometers, which is in the red spectrum, and then again between about 810 to 880 nanometers, which is in the near infrared, invisible spectrum. And both of those wavelengths have been proven to having profound effects on cellular function. The main difference being that the longer wavelengths of the near infrared have been demonstrated to be better at reaching deeper tissue. So while the 660 range gets more quickly absorbed by the skin tissues and is optimal for producing benefits such as increased collagen production, the near infrared wavelengths are excellent at reaching through to deeper muscle and joint tissues.
Hence the inflammation effects that you have, the anti-inflammation effects that are created. For me, it's why take an Aleve, right? Why take an aspirin? Why risk all that? And we know the risk of Tylenol by itself, and long use of any of those things. So, I mean, so the deeper penetration from the infrared light is able to almost a full body kind of effect, right? And increases blood flow to a point, really, which is where fibromyalgia, which you see on the rise, really is assisted with this, right?
That's correct. And, one of the things that's incredible, I think, science is just beginning to touch on the importance of light for overall health. But there is research demonstrating, as you point out, that it does increase cardiovascular function and circulation. And one of the theories that's proposed by a gentleman like Dr. Gerald Pollack, author of the book, The Fourth Phase of Water, he talks about how our bodies harness light, and from the research that he's conducted, is very likely to be a driving force in pushing blood cells through vessels that are actually smaller than the cells themselves. And they're finding out that it's not actually driven primarily by pressure from the heart, like you would think. It's actually being drawn as an electrochemical process that is used harnessing light.
Holy shit, man! And what he's saying in layman's terms is we're constricting our own bodies through lack of exposure to light and more exposure to blue light, and possibly with Dr. Jack Cruz EMF as well, and other things that are just possibly compressing from the outside, which makes sense, right? If we're shooting waves at our bodies in whatever level, right, it's going to affect us at least on the surface, right, down deep. And maybe in the age of exposure to blue light, I mean, we need the enhanced exposure, right, to red light.
That's true, and we've had incredible feedback. We've been fortunate to be endorsed by Dr. Mercola, and he approached us some time ago and was intrigued by the technology. And one of the things that he's noticed, and he's obviously been in the forefront of the alternative wellness industry for some time. He spends some of the conversations we've had with him. He gets his morning walk on the beach. I mean, he's clearly gets a lot of sunlight. But even he was really floored with the impact of doing sessions. He uses our combo max device that has basically a full body treatment of both of those, the wavelengths I mentioned, 660 nanometers and 850. And he couldn't believe, after using it after just even one time after post-workout, just the impact it had for muscle recovery. The soreness that he knows that he should have gotten the next day just didn't come. So he's become a big fan.
Yeah, you were talking about that, Scott, with the high-end athletes, right? When you were using it pre and post workout, et cetera. That's what drove my interest when I saw it. Was I actually saw it through Jeremy Stevens, your direct product, and with the fighters that the little links that I have to talk to. It's where I shared it and got involved, and that's where you see a lot of focus, right? Is how can I optimize not even just the training, but also the recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably been one of the more surprising. I guess I'm trying to think of the word, the best word to use, but that's been surprising to us, seeing the uptick in that sort of that demographic, I guess, if you will, for lack of better terms, is that competitive competitive athletes, fitness enthusiasts that are looking for that edge, especially a guy like Jeremy Stevens. I mean, he's had a tremendous career. One of the veterans, but is still going at it strong. And one of the reasons is he incorporates a lot of these types of different therapies. One of those being light therapy, and understands that not only that it's backed by solid clinical data, but it just simply works. And so we've seen an increase across the board in inbound interest from the sports community, from professional hockey players to NFL players, et cetera. It's typically those that are a little bit more on the leading edge. They're looking for they're listening to shows like yours or the Ben Greenfield podcast or what have you, that are incorporating these different therapies and seeing fruitful results.
Is it possible to think that I mean, I follow Dr. Rhonda Patrick at Found My Fitness. I get a lot of that too. I wrote about her in the book as well, but the gut research and how much we know, the beginning to learn and know even further how much the gut affects our brain development and so many things in our lives, right? It's being connected to even dopamine, I think, creation, serotonin creation, possibly. So many things that is the infrared able to get deep enough to actually do some enhancement or things? I mean, because she does some research with sauna and links to some gut research they found there. But is there any research that you guys have found that are pointing to ability to enhance the gut or not heal it, but clean it or any effects?
Yeah. There's definitely clinical evidence with respect to reducing inflammation within the gut. It's not there's not a direct one-to-one tie like the study I mentioned earlier with respect to increasing muscle thickness. A lot of it you sort of have to connect the dots a little bit, but there's certainly a profound amount of clinical evidence that suggests light therapy with the specific wavelengths actually helps to sort of almost rebalance your immune system and switch it from an M1 phenotype to an M2 phenotype, which enhances something called phagocytosis, and that actually helps your macrophages to actually sort of digest those free radicals, if you will. And so there's definitely a fair amount of clinical evidence. In fact, Dr. Michael Hamlin, who's on our scientific advisory board, he's a researcher. He runs his own photomedicine lab at Harvard. He actually just had a nice little write-up in a magazine called Bare Essentials, where he kind of discussed this very thing with respect to extreme athletes and how they can not only enhance their performance but also reduce inflammation. And so it's a nice little piece. We can certainly send it to you if you want to link to it in the show notes. But it's an interesting little read that covers light therapy from his perspective, considering he's published well over 300 clinical studies himself.
Anything that can, inflammation is linked to so many things as well. I mean, it seems to be the starting point for so many diseases or issues that we find everywhere. So, I mean, an athlete, I was one for a little while. I guess I sort of am one now, but whatever that subjective notion means, right? But you're almost in a constant state of inflamed, right? Whether you're actually performing or then you're not performing and recovering from being inflamed, right? So then you inflame it again. So it's this constant rotation that many people do if they're not, especially if you're not practicing proper movement and functional movement. But if you stay inflamed, so I kind of play the chess moves further. If you are a top performing fighter, tennis player, or whatever, it doesn't matter. If I'm keeping myself less inflamed for a longer period of time, I can see not only playing longer, but maybe playing a shorter period of time and then having a good quality of life longer after putting your body through so much.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And that point almost reminds me of some of Dr. Rhonda Patrick's work that you just mentioned, and her specifically about sauna therapy and how, you're inducing sort of stress on your body, right, with heat. And you get the corresponding downstream ramifications with the heat shock proteins and, sort of inducing almost like a cardiovascular response in your body, but then allowing your body to almost recover that fight or flight response that you actually want. But to your point, Adam, I mean, we need those times where you actually recover, where you help your cells, you help your body at a cellular level recover from some of that stress-induced inflammation. And so if you don't have that recovery bit, that could just lead to a cascade of prolonged negative ramifications. And that's where like light therapy really comes into play, is actually helping with recovery. There's definitely studies that show that using it before a competitive event does help enhance athletic performance, but that recovery aspect is crucial, when it comes to light therapy.
Yeah, they're gonna ban it now. It's performance enhancing light therapy.
That's right.
Don't nobody tell WADA. They'll find some way to ban it. But I think that's right. There's so many people out there pushing the boundaries of optimization. Sometimes I look at it, sorry, I'll be judged, but a NASCAR reference, because all the cars have to be the same. And it's that small little tweak that that little bit of passed down information that you can do that goes under the radar that just enhances the turn a tad, the tires to last a little longer, right? It's those small modifications that I think start out as just small modifications that we find out end up being huge influences in our life race. And something like red light therapy possibly could be one of those things. I see it affecting so many different avenues. Are there some new areas that red light therapy is kind of pushing the boundaries of, or maybe shown in a little research here and there that, just a blip on the radar? There's, nothing conforming or confirming, but something maybe beyond, the anti-inflammation, et cetera?
Sure. Well, I'll tease this a little bit. It hasn't even been published yet, but we've been working with Dr. Hamlin, and he's put together a pretty incredible review that's taken a look at the impact that photobiomodulation can have on cancer cells, and specifically treating someone at their whole body level, and the impact that has. They're going back a couple decades. There was some thought process or some contraindications about the potential of enhancing the tumor growth if they were induced with photobiomodulation. But with the advent of LEDs, what they've really started to see, and the research is documenting, is that by giving your body a treatment of specific wavelengths of light, you can actually enhance your body's natural functions to combat cancer cells. So that's something that I'll tease. I expect that to be published here within a couple of weeks, if not even sooner.
Anything to add to that one, Scott?
Yeah, no, that's a great one, because it comes up so often. We see that question come up quite a bit. How does this impact cancer? And as Justin mentioned, the historical thought was that it may be contraindicated. It was like there's evidence kind of both for the pros and cons of using light therapy for oncology patients. But more and more evidence or more and more clinical data is being published with respect to full body light therapy. It seems like it really does impact cancer, or can help patients that are dealing with cancer in a very positive way. So that's something interesting. Another area of interest, I think, is just there's these core kind of buckets with respect to light therapy that you tend to see in the clinical literature. Things like muscle recovery, joint pain, skin health, sort of the obvious. But then there's these some researchers are starting to publish more and more studies with respect to not only cognitive, enhanced cognitive function, but also nerve repair, nerve regeneration.
Holy
and so that's the kind of stuff that's really interesting, and we've got
that's, dude, on a mental health aspect. I mean,
Yeah.
the biggest unknown abyss in psychology, even when you work in neuroscientists, is the TBI, that traumatic brain injury, and now the CTE stuff coming out, right? I mean, that's where, as a psychologist, you're like, look, I can't tell you this. I can't walk you through the mental health aspect if we know there's traumatic brain injury there. And if you're talking about nerve regeneration, possible regrowth could add to that. Wow, man, that's
it's pretty incredible. I was just on that note, speaking of nerve regeneration, we've got a family member who actually has been a paraplegic for, gosh, I think 30 or 40 years. I mean, Justin might know a little bit better. I can't remember exactly, but he's seen such dramatic benefits with respect to wound healing for the past probably over the past year or so. But just like seeing my wife and Justin's wife were with him recently, and seeing showing him some of this early clinical data with respect to that aspect. I mean, the just the renewed hope that he could potentially have, and just, seeing even some minor improvements with respect to nerve regeneration is pretty cool. I mean, granted, that's, potentially a long ways out, but just the hope alone is pretty cool to see, because the data is right there. I mean, there's more and more clinical data with respect to things like that. So it's pretty cool to see a response like that.
One thing I wanted to jump in there too with the cognitive benefits, there are actually some impressive studies for Alzheimer's patients. And you mentioned CTE, and I know some of the early indications, while it's not greatly understood some of the ties there, but I know from a visual perspective, some of the operations that they've done on patients that have succumbed to CTE, that the early indications are that it looks very similar to Alzheimer's patients' brain function. So with the promising aspects there with what's Alzheimer's, it'll definitely be interesting to see what comes out here over the next several years as this gets more widely understood.
And between cancer, nerve regeneration, I mean, that's possible. People walking again. There's so many avenues. I mean, of possibility. You're right. The hope that something like that can bring, even if it's just that we see enough pessimism, right? Enough. This is going to kill everybody. This is exposure. Well, I love people that fight back from that, right? I think we can stand back and point out, look over there, look how shitty it is. EMF is terrible. This is bad. But if we can point out solutions, right, and ideas, maybe ways to fight back. And cancer obviously is something we've been fighting forever, and probably longer than we probably should, in my opinion. It should be freaking done by now. But even if you're adding this to your repertoire and you're just optimization, man, there's so many impacts of it. And any harmful side effects? Are there anything out there where people shouldn't do this, where you shouldn't incorporate it into your life? Anything kind of proven on a negative side of using this in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question that we get often asked. But that's the great thing about photobiomodulation is there really have been no proven harmful side effects. We mentioned that there's some of the early thought process on cancer was one that there's some thinking along those lines early on, but again, that's starting to be pretty overwhelmingly debunked. Another common question we get is, what about your eyes? It's really bright. There's actually evidence that it does help with eye health. It can actually boost your mitochondrial function in your retina, and they've shown that it can benefit from cataracts, different other degenerative eye disease disorders as well. So I guess another one that falls into that bucket a little bit would be what about if I'm pregnant? There really isn't a definitive answer there. That's something we've discussed with Dr. Hamblin as well. As you can imagine, he suspects that there would be benefits both for the baby as well as the potentially the mother, but there's no established clinical research there. So that's one of those things where we just have kind of direct people to consult with their physician. But from the early indications and from everything that we know, there's certainly no established harmful effects.
Well, I hope there's not a whole lot of mothers willing to just volunteer their baby for new shit, light or not, It makes me, we're okay that the research is out on pregnant women. All right, I can deal with that. If we have too many people signed up, I'm a little worried. Put the light on my back. I wouldn't care. Right? No. So kudos to those that do. Now, is there any overexposure concerns? Right? Let's say somebody gets so obsessed with it, a placebo effect takes place. Quadruple the time to the already effects that we know that come from it, right? And they sleep under it, they wake up under it, they find a way to shower under it, right? Is this okay? Do I just live in the red light my whole life?
Well, that's a good point. So my son actually loves to use his. He bought his own, and he has it hung from the bunk bed above him. My 16-year-old son, and he'll use it to relax at night. But I've had to caution him, like, hey, you can't have that thing on all night. Your body needs a break. So from the aspect of taking light into our eyes, our bodies are designed to take that in, obviously, throughout the day, but they need a break. So you're basically delivering energy, in the evening to help restore and repair to give that energy to your body. But yeah, I certainly would recommend using it all night. In terms of a total dosage, there is certainly discussion of what they call a biphasic dosage, where if you get too much, it can have kind of table off that effect. But I would say that the overall dosage, you will see clinical studies that show enhanced benefits with pretty substantial dosages, upwards of even 100 joules per square centimeter. So to touch on that, that's one of the most critical aspects in looking at a light therapy device is not only the wavelengths, but making sure that you have a device that's giving you the amount of energy required to give a substantial dosage, so you actually are able to get an effective dosage.
All right, so this will be kind of two-part question. So walk me through. I'm the typical guy, right? I'm a weekend warrior guy. I do my classes during the week too. I get a basic sun exposure, a little more than most. But I want to work this in. What's a device like that look like? How do I set that up? How do I imagine it in my house? And what's a type of routine that I go through as that? And that question will go to you, Justin. And then Scott, on the athletic end, what are the differences then between being just that the weekend warrior health person and the optimizing athlete, on how they then would work that in, what it looks like in their gym or in their home, in their routine?
Sure.
So I'll take a part one there. So how to implement this in your life, that's one of the challenges that we had early on is, how do we create a device that's simple, easy to use, that's easy to incorporate? Most people don't have room to add like a tanning bed to their house someplace, let alone the cost of, that size of device. So what we offer with all three sizes of our devices, we have what we call the mini, the original, and the max. And all three of those sizes are designed to hang on the back of a door. So literally there's no engineering skills required to get this set up in your house. You basically throw a hook on your door, or two hooks in the case of the max light, and hang the light right there. The mini and the original come with a pulley system, so you can raise it and lower it to treat the desired area. And then it's just a matter of incorporating that from a time perspective. So a lot of people find that they enjoy using it in the evenings because it does have benefits as far as reducing oxidative stress. It's very relaxing, helps with the repair as we've discussed. So something that a lot of times people enjoy doing in the evening or even right before bed.
All right, now I'm the athlete. I'm rolling at jiu-jitsu 4 nights a week, right? I'm doing kickboxing on the weekends, right? I'm all in now athlete, right? I may even go pro, right? I could be a pro, right? What's the difference then of I guess, like I said, the weekend weight?
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest difference is probably goes back to the dosage that Justin covered earlier. Is you want to look for a device that can deliver a clinically relevant dose of energy, especially if you're looking for probably two primary things with athletes: muscle recovery, and then potentially like joint pain relief or some sort of pain relief, whether it's a tear in a muscle or something relative to a joint issue. And so with those types of things, you need a fairly decent dose of energy. Something probably, I would argue, at least more than 50 joules per session in order to see significant results.
How long is that? What kind of time frame exposure is that?
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to the power output from the device. So like with our devices, for example, that's one of the things that we really wanted to optimize for. So you wouldn't have to use something for 2 hours every day. No one's going to do that, me included. And so that's something that we really wanted to optimize for. And there's a specific metric that you want to look for. It's called irradiance, and usually irradiance is measured in milliwatts per square centimeter. And so at the end of the day, from a big picture, our devices deliver about, at the recommended treatment distance, they deliver about 6 to 7 joules of energy per minute. And so if you're an athlete and you're looking for about 50 joules plus, you want to use it for about 8 to 10 minutes per session, per treatment area. And so if you're using something like our full body device, like the Max, you could stand it, say you just did a heavy squat day, I could stand in front of, stand in my back towards the device for 8 to 10 minutes. And I'm most likely gonna notice a significant, recovery versus, not using the device. And so it's really, with athletes, it probably just comes down to using it maybe for a little bit longer than maybe, the normal kind of weekend warrior, just because that you probably want a little bit higher dose.
So it's something I'd work in. Let's say it is a, I don't know, and pick your martial art, training. So in between while I'm working out, and definitely something at the end of it, I'd want to work in something maybe I'd want to start my day with, since it's anti-inflammatory. Maybe I've been laying in the same position all night. You wake up kind of stiff. I usually roll out in the morning, something like that. But 8 to 10 minutes, if I'm not the athlete, exposure kind of thing in the morning.
Yeah, and I think Justin kind of touched on this before, but in terms of like optimal times of day to use it, morning and evening are probably the best, and that sort of coincides with just the natural rise and sun and set of of sunlight. And with the sunrise and sunset, you're getting more red and near infrared light at those times of day, so it makes sense to probably use a light therapy device that's delivering those wavelengths at during those specific times of day. But I would say, kind of going back to your question though, first and foremost, just try to work it into your daily routine. That's probably most important, just consistency. So if you can only squeeze it in the morning, that's great. If you're really trying to optimize performance and you can squeeze it in morning and night, that's ideal. But specific to actual training, I mean, if I'm an athlete and I've got training maybe in the morning and maybe an evening session as well, I may use it before I actually compete first thing in the morning to kind of prime my body, and then maybe again at night after the training's over to help induce normal cellular function to aid in recovery.
Yeah. Are there any biological or molecular changes in my body that have to take place before I start feeling effects? Obviously, if the light does what it does, anti-inflammatory, we can feel those instantaneously. But is there, for someone that may not be as athletic, right, that just does it for experiencing pain or anything like that, is there time to wait before you start seeing effects? So you mentioned the consistency, Scott. And for some, I kind of want to get by is, no, I tried it. I put the light on my fibromyalgia with my hands and I got nothing, in one night. So it doesn't work right. Are there any changes on our biological level that have to change within us to feel the effects? Do some that are healthier feel it faster, etc.? What's kind of the exposure time with this before people really may feel those effects?
Sure. Yeah. When it comes to muscle recovery or joint pain, most people are going to experience results fairly quickly. I would probably say, if not almost within a few days, definitely within the first week. And that's been, not only is that shown in literature, but we've seen it across thousands of customers that have purchased these devices and the reviews that they've given us. With respect to things like skin health, that's a little bit different. Most of the energy, as Justin mentioned before, is absorbed in the dermis and epidermis of your skin, and typically that's going to require a little bit more prolonged usage, probably over the course of at least 3 to 4 weeks before you begin to see noticeable results. Some of that, I would argue, is because we look at ourselves every day in the mirror, so it's just harder to notice those types of changes. But most of the clinical studies with respect to skin health are typically, you get these longer windows of treatment in terms of measuring both before and after results. And so skin health takes a little bit longer, but with respect to muscle recovery and joint pain, typically you're going to see results a lot sooner than that. But consistency is key. I mean, it's not like something that we recommend using maybe once or twice a week. We ideally recommend using it daily, and if not daily, a solid 4 or 5 times a week if at all possible. And a lot of that just has to do with the fact that the mechanism of action at a cellular level. And that's not something, if you don't mind, I can jump into that real quick, just for your listeners that want to get a little bit nerdy. But most of the mechanism of action with respect to light therapy happens during the 4th phase of cellular respiration. And normal cellular function, oxygen helps bind to NADH to actually form ATP synthase, which is a precursor to ATP. So cellular energy, basically. But what happens is when our cells are stressed, nitric oxide, which I'm sure most of the people listening have heard, listening to the show have heard of that. Too much nitric oxide can be a bad thing, and nitric oxide will actually bind to cytochrome C oxidase, this enzyme called cytochrome C oxidase, and so that actually halts the production of ATP synthase. And so light therapy with the specific wavelengths actually breaks that bond between cytochrome C oxidase and NADH, or cytochrome C oxidase and nitric oxide. So when that bond is broken, that actually helps cytochrome C oxidase then bind or induce oxygen ions to bind to hydrogen ions to induce normal cellular function. And so that was kind of a lot to get through relatively quickly, but that's what's going on at a cellular level. And so there's a ton of this information, on our site for those that want to learn a little bit more. But because of that core mechanism of action, that you're just inducing the normal cellular production of ATP, that's why you get such a broad range of benefits.
Yeah, so ATP feeds so much of our body, and now the contrast that came up, or the thought that came up, right, is our exposure to light, to natural light, to being out in the sun, etc., does all of those things, right? Again, we're referencing back to Dr. Jack Kruse's research, right? It increases that, it does all kinds of things, right? Working in the red light, I think we touched on a little bit. I think Justin covered a little bit about overexposure, right? But is there any drawback or any issue with, say, I've spent all day in the sun and maybe I'm at the beach all day, right? Or I'm just hanging out all day in the sun, 6, 7, 8 hours, right? Or fishing all day. And now I've come back, and my regular therapy would be to now expose for maybe 20 minutes or so and rotate. Would there be any worry there of overdoing it when I mix it with sunlight? Maybe I work outside all day, right? Something like that.
Actually, that'd be a perfect time to get a treatment in. There's actually research that shows, I just wrote a blog post on this, on sunlight and how it compares and works with photobiomodulation. And it talks about how getting near infrared and red wavelengths before you're exposed to UV rays actually prepares your body to harness the UV wavelengths. And then afterwards, in the evening, getting those wavelengths, whether it's through evening sunlight or in a shorter session of photobiomodulation, you actually help restore some of the stress and damage that can be caused by UV rays. So it's definitely something that you can still benefit from, even if you do get a healthy dosage of sunlight.
Yeah, so it's a prep in your body, right? Dr. Jack Kruse talks about your body you just won't absorb it. You could be on the equator, not just going to start absorbing naturally. That's why I asked about was there any molecular change or biological change that had to take place so I could absorb it better. So really being out in the sun even more, then mixing this actually allows you to absorb even more of the benefits from it.
Exactly. That's the incredible thing. There's so many things that our bodies get put through. You mentioned, EMFs and blue light, and we have all these stressors that basically rob our body of cellular energy and cellular function. And this is just a great way to help restore that function. So it's been incredible to see just the wide range of benefits. You touched on the great question. What kind of time lane should I expect to see a benefit from this problem or this issue? And obviously it's impossible to answer that for customers that are curious. But I would just say that the research is overwhelmingly shows that it helps with cellular function, and that and it does help with a wide range of health benefits. Obviously, the timeline that everyone's going to experience that those symptoms kind of decreasing for themselves it just kind of depends on their own individual health situation. But encourage people to, as Scott mentioned, use it daily, and we also include a 60-day money back guarantee with all of our devices too. So helps people have that peace of mind that, hey, try it, use it for a full 2 months. If you're not totally satisfied, send it back, and we're happily send you a refund.
Beautiful. I was pulling up some of the comments. The Tribe of Change. I think that's how your wife got a hold of me. Somebody put her in the Tribe of Change, and then she reached out through that group. So I posted a while ago. If anybody had some comments, questions, there's some cerebral cats in that group, man. They're way smarter than me. So I'll try to see if I can make sure I pronounce all the words they use. So let's see. Joe Sutter, he's commenting about how he enjoyed it, his experiences from it. My co-author definitely got a post. He has if he get a light. Paul Gallagher, should we pay much attention to the inverse square law when it comes to your Joovv devices, and what are the main differences between your devices and an IR ear lamp?
Sure, no, that's a great question. So infrared, as I mentioned, has a wide range of wavelengths, and infrared saunas or any device that just says, hey, this is near infrared. Well, there could be different benefits from those wavelengths. You really need to check and make sure if you're wanting photobiomodulation results, then you really need to make sure it's using those optimum wavelengths. So that would be the thing that I would look for is, are they using the wavelengths that the research supports, as I mentioned, between 630 and 670 nanometers, or between 810 and 880 nanometers for the near infrared.
And on that note, Adam, most people, we get this question a lot, is like how, and I think that's maybe what Paul's getting at, is how is this different than like the little heat lamps that you can buy at the local Home Depot, or there's even some companies that sell devices that incorporate heat lamps, and it's just fundamentally different than light therapy. Heat lamps are pretty inefficient. They deliver a pretty broad range of wavelengths, as Justin just mentioned. They also deliver a lot of heat, and so you lose a lot of that energy as heat. So they may be halfway decent at inducing like a sauna type of benefit, but not necessarily really ideal for light therapy or photobiomodulation.
He went on to talk about the penetration and the depth of it, and kind of complementing what you all do is reaching those, etc. So he went on to basically, I get it, and thanks, and hope everybody's well. Let's see, Raphael, should someone still do red light therapy if they live somewhere they can get sun all year? I think we kind of covered that topic, as if you can be in sun all year, it's even better for you. Let's see, I'm going to be terrible with the names, man. Taintoa Webster, ideal timing of cold thermogenesis, cold shower for me, and Joovv use in pre-bed routine. Beautiful. She was just reaching out, saying, it works and I like it. A few other compliments. What do Justin and Scott think about the future of red or other light therapies? Will it become more mainstream in the near future? I do like that question. Are there any other light frequencies or colors or patterns that do anything different?
Well, that's a great question. There's some research supporting different specific wavelengths of blue light for reducing inflammation, and also like actually killing bacteria, for example. But to the first part of that question, do we see this becoming more mainstream? I think the answer is absolutely. In one of our early talks with Dr. Michael Hamlin, what he said was, I anticipate, whether it's 5 years or 10 years, at some point, literally every household in this country is going to have a light therapy device in their house. And he said, I don't see any reason why it can't be yours. And so we said, well, we like the way you think. So, it's definitely something that I think everybody can benefit from. And it's an investment that our customers have proven time again that they don't regret.
Yeah, well, look, we're willing to look at me. I'm sitting here. I'm trying to follow Dr. Jack Cruz's advice the best I can, but I really love my studio, and I guess we give away what we gain. I'll probably have cancer one day of the ear or some shit, but I try to set it up to where I got direct sunlight, coming in this way, right? But we're willing to put the mics around us, surround us with ourselves with the EMF, right? We're willing to damage ourselves with, late night television and phone, waking up to and all day, right? That a simple, incorporating another light in the home, hell yeah, that's plausible. Yeah, I'm way with it. Especially, I'd love to see further and further research about its fight against blue light exposure. To if you can counteract that. He talks about using sunlight to counteract that. Right? I got to go outside, strip down naked, walk in the grass here for an hour after this podcast. And so if I can also incorporate possibly red light to fight that exposure, I think he's talked about that as being effective too for it some. So, I mean, this is beautiful. I love it. It's, from what it seems like, I love to be able to say with no harmful side effects. I say that with my book, and I love to say it with this, man. And the impact, even over here on the mental health side, that I spoke about in the beginning, that it could really, if it's enough to keep people off of too much Tylenol, that leads to too much Vicodin, that leads to too many other opiates that follow, then that's still a hand up for other people. And it doesn't take much to incorporate that in your life. And those are kind of the things that I think will change lives, and are good for us. In a place where we need some different holistic approaches, man, that are based in actual science.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Two things I'd recommend if you have questions, you're kind of still skeptical, check out the Learn page on our website. There's a ton of great info dives into a couple of the things we've talked about today. Obviously, differences, benefits from with sunlight. We talk about kind of differences between sonotherapy and photobiomodulation. There's even a piece on those infrared heat lamps and why this is different. But if you're not a science geek and you just want to see like what does it help you with, then I'd highly encourage you to check out the reviews page. That's my favorite part about doing this is getting those reviews and seeing the differences that it's making in people's lives. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and just to add on that, Adam, I think you're dead on with respect to your comment about like where photobiomodulation or light therapy and the possibilities that it has for the future. And I think there's just going to be so long, like all of us growing up. I think we're all kind of similar ages. We've grown up under the context that sunlight is bad. We've got to put sunscreen on all the time. And I was just reading an Instagram post from someone earlier today that's like, you need to be putting it on 5 times a day. And it was just like this. There's just going to be a lot more education and awareness around the benefits and how our bodies actually metabolize light. We're talking about specific wavelengths, but I see that Dr. Jack Cruz, who we've mentioned several times, is doing a phenomenal job of bringing attention and awareness to how our bodies metabolize light. But I think just like there's so much education around how our bodies metabolize food, I think we're going to see a renewed interest in how our bodies metabolize light in the future. So I think that's going to be kind of cool to see.
Yeah, that's a good way to end the Rampage. The way our bodies metabolize light. I mean, the process of we're eating the light. And man, I'm sorry, I had a flip. I went, man, you could go all the way back to all this religious text where we know they're talking about the sun, right? Just spelled differently, and a worship toward the sun in some way. You start to look back and go, oh, maybe. I mean, if it's keeping your ass alive, if it's keeping you healthy, I can see back then where somebody's going to worship something. Maybe they didn't know, right? Maybe they didn't know scientifically, but hey, I feel it when I go outside and I've been in the sun. And I spend a weekend by the water in the sun. I know what that does to me and my feelings. So this is an enhanced toward that. It adds toward that, makes us healthier for it, fellows, man. And where can everybody find it? Pronounce it too for everybody, and send them to the places they need to go. I know you already sent to the information, but I mean to actually get the product and find it.
Yep. The website is joovv.com. That's JOOVV.com. And so yeah, check it out. It's there's a ton of stuff to learn on there, and if you go to the product page, you can check out the info on the different models that we offer, and we have a chat function, and we're happy to answer any questions that come up along the way.
No, I know you're itching. Come on, walk us out of here, Scott.
Well, if you want to pronounce this Joovv or Joovv, we'll take it. We'll take it however you want to pronounce it. But yeah, joovv.com. If you're a science geek or you kind of want to dig into that, go to the Learn page. If you want to stay high level and you just kind of want to hear how other people have responded to our device, check out the reviews page. It's pretty cool to kind of scroll through there and hear what people are saying in their own words, with no marketing fluff. But as a company, we culture is a big thing, and we try to be as authentic and genuine as possible. So any questions that you have, we'd love to address them. And we understand if some people are skeptical, we were too. We've gotten over that hump, with digging into the science. But we just encourage everyone, keep an open mind, look at the science, and more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, and remind them, as I got a comment here, that you can't just go buy the red LED light at Walmart and say what you're saying. There's a difference between the bulb.
Yeah, we like to stick to the rule of 3. So when you're looking for a device, whether it's ours or something else, the rule of 3 is what wavelengths does it deliver? So pay attention to the wavelengths. Look at the irradiance, not the wattage, but the irradiance. That's really important. That'll allow you to calculate the joules that are delivered to your body. And then third is the treatment area. Like, how much of my body can I treat in one single time? So if you keep those 3 things in mind, that'll help kind of guide you, towards, the best product, the best products out there.
That's perfect. How our society loves the 3 things that you can take away from this podcast are, right? We don't remember all the rest of the competence, but give me the 3 steps to getting thin, getting rich, and being happy, right?
There's always 3.
That's right, man. That's psychology says do 3, man. I appreciate you guys coming on, man, and sharing all the information and what you do. And please keep living that cognitive rampage, that cognitive red light rampage. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity, Adam. We're big fans of your work, man. So keep it going. Yeah, we love what you do.
Thank y'all, man. You're too kind. I have my moments is all.
We really appreciate it. Thank you.
See you, fellas.
See ya.